Good morning, everybody. Keith Engel here for TGI Sports Talk's Sunday Stream of Consciousness. Great to have you with us. I paused a little bit in the beginning, had a little sip of coffee, hoping the video would settle in. I noticed even with the great speed on my upload now, and I think the shows have been much better the last week or so. So hopefully fix that problem. But I do notice in the early part of the show, which I just noticed now, we get a little hesitation. So anyway, what are you going to do? I can't do anything better than what I've done. The router is right next to me. The modem is right next to me. Anyway, welcome everybody. It's a great Sunday morning here in East Greenbush. I almost said I have moved to Half Moon, New York. And happy to be here. Great day with my wife yesterday. Miniature golf, which usually ought to take about an hour, took about 4. I've never seen people playing in 20-somes before on miniature golf courses or any golf courses. We had fun, though. Out for a little bite to eat afterwards. Had a lot of fun. So welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a good weekend. Welcome to everybody watching us on, of course, TGI Sports Talk, Facebook and YouTube. You can watch us there at any point in time later on as well, if you don't see the whole show. Welcome to everybody on Northeast Streaming Sports. Let's Talk Sports. Maybe later on Sideline Sports. I've got to get an update here and find out what's going on before I continue to plug them. I want to, but if I'm not showing up there, I certainly don't want that. I don't seem to be getting a lot of, not to rip them, I'm not ripping them. I have not had any conversation with anybody from Sideline Sports, so, but we'll continue to push them for now. And just a shout out to Dan Harris. If Dan, you're listening this morning, hope you're doing better today. And everybody, keep a good thought for Let's Talk Sports, Dan Harris. We're going to get into a lot of stuff today. By the way, we'll have Jim Biringer join us at about 9 o'clock. We'll probably dive into the college football manic movement that started Friday. Well, it started with Colorado a week ago. But who knew Colorado could cause such a giant ripple? We'll talk some baseball. I want to talk about, and probably before Jim comes in, I'll talk about the Yankees a little bit, the Rizzo situation, which just boggles my mind. Herman a little bit, Judge coming back, and expectations. Great game by Nestor Cortez yesterday, by the way. We'll get into, and we'll look around the league. We'll talk about some teams still with some gaping holes that expect to be contenders. If we get a chance, and get around the league. Just Friday's, check out Friday's MLB update, by the way. Drew was on with me, Drew Ehrlich, our own Drew Ehrlich, and we went through all of the trades, division by division, what was good, what was bad, and what made us shake our heads. So check that out. Again, Jim Biringer and I will get into all the movement in the college football, which we'll talk a lot more about on the college football huddle on Wednesday, and more in depth probably. And maybe a little hockey news. Don't know yet what Jim's got in mind. And the NFL, we'll talk about the Hall of Fame inductions yesterday. Some strange things make me shake my head. If Zach Thomas is a Hall of Famer, somebody tell me, and I'm not saying both of them should be in there or either of them should be in there. Both shouldn't. If Zach Thomas is in the Hall of Fame, one guy comes to mind. There's always a guy that comes to mind. In every class, there's a guy I say, if there's guys in there, how's this guy not in there? If Zach Thomas, who was a fine football player, is in the Hall of Fame, how's Teddy Bruschi not in the Hall of Fame? Somebody explain that to me. And we'll talk about the most impactful guys in that class. I just had a little bit of a debate on the Mac and Jack show with Jim Jeffco is on my side again. I think Don Coryell, long overdue. No Super Bowl victories does not discount him from being in the Hall of Fame in my mind. He had a huge effect on the game, changing the way the game was played. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe if we get a chance to talk about NFL quarterbacks and some of their tiers. And your topics, guys, whatever you want to talk about, we will try to get to. Good morning, Dave Guyette. Good to have you with us this morning out there in Gloversville, right? Gloversville, New York. CA's with us. Blessed Sunday to everybody. Guys, CA, real quick, did you decide to reduce this to 10 and lead the league full of 10 without taking a chance that we won't pull in 2 more teams? I'm fine with that if that's the case. And if that is the case, and you guys, there's somebody else that's interested, we will need 2 of you. So I'd love to get more guys in. Just say the word, and we'll once I get my answer from CA, we'll try to adjust that. Good morning, Rick Sherlock. Good to have you with us. Rick sent me a very funny video about Perth Central schools all year reunion, which I'm not going to be able to make, unfortunately. But speaking to some of our AV issues, he recommended I go to a walkthrough at PCS with Buck Buchanan and get some tips on some of our issues. I had a good laugh out of that, Rick. Thank you. Oh my God, I can't find my comments. Where are they? Oh, there you go. Who else we got here? Kenny Gifford's with us early this morning. Good morning, Kenny. Good to have you with us. Mohawks beat the Yankees 3-0. I'm not sure if there was a Yankee team that I know the Mohawks did win the perfect game collegiate league again, which is like, I don't know, 19 out of 20 years. I'm not even sure. Rick might be able to fill us in on that, or Kenny. But congratulations to them. I don't know that they beat a team called the Yankees, but they might give the Yankees a run. Listen, the Yankees did win 3-1 yesterday. Big comeback early. They pushed Nelson Cortez's rehab up. He only made 2 rehab starts. Pitched great yesterday. Pitched 4 innings. Gave up a run, I believe, and struck out 8. Yankees need him big a time to be able to get back in this race. What did I think about Stanton when he was running to home plate? Again, yesterday, I did not see that, Dave, so give me a little update what he did. Whatever. Stanton is not my favorite. Listen, he's not a bad guy. Stanton's on a hot streak right now. Unfortunately, it's going to cool off. The Mohawks swept the 2-game championship series. Congratulations again to them. How was Kelsko in? I don't know. Klesko, sorry, in before Marshall. You know, it's funny. That position is very hard to evaluate. I mean, Jim Marshall certainly has longevity in his favor and a great player. I think the big problem with Jim Marshall is he's overlooked. I'm sorry, not overlooked. Well, overlooked because he's overshadowed by the 3 guys, or 2 guys specifically, and sometimes the 3rd, that he played with. I don't disagree with you. Jim Marshall should be in the Hall of Fame. Joe Klecko is a good player for a much shorter period of time. He was a dominant player, but again, for a much shorter period of time. Didn't play, in his fairness to him, with the same type of talent. You can say what you want about Mark Gastineau, but he's not Alan Page. So I think that hurts him. Teddy Bruschi was one of the middle linebackers on about 4 championship teams for the Patriots. 3 Patriot teams for. Actually, Teddy Bruschi had a stroke after I think the 2nd Super Bowl championship, sat out a year and came back. Teddy Bruschi is a great player and a leader of that Patriot defense. Again, that was in 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, and longer. He had a long career. He played in the 96 Super Bowl that they lost to Green Bay. Ken. John Gonzalez with us this morning, to the great Keith Engel. Well, I don't know about that, but thank you, John, for that kind comment. John Gonzalez from the Sports Authorities. Guys, I've told you 100 times, if you're not following, get on and follow or like the Sports Authorities. It's a great place. John posts some great stuff, and everybody there is posting some great stuff. He's kind enough to allow me and some others to share their podcasts as well as other information and some great nostalgic stuff too, as we talked about last week. We probably don't have time to get into all that nostalgia today, but it's fun to do. I had a lot of fun doing that with John last week, I think it was. Stanton looked like the fridge running for a touchdown. You know what? I say to all these guys, you know what Barry Sanders said? I can't get into histrionics, flipping bats, taking 10 minutes to run around the bases. Whatever you do coming to home plate. I mean, I always remember of anybody who's a showboat. I don't care what sport we're talking about. Football, basketball, baseball, Australian rules football. Barry Sanders was always asked, why, when you score a touchdown, no spikes, Barry? Why do you just hand the ball to the referee? Best comment ever in the history of pro sports. I do that because I want to act like I've been here before, and I expect to be back. Great line. He was running the home plate like he was jogging and was tagged out. Oh, you're not talking about when he hit a home run. He doesn't run. He's not. If he runs, he's going to get hurt. I'm not a big Stanton fan because he's a one-dimensional player. I would have traded Stanton at the deadline. I would have traded Stanton at the deadline, eaten his contract. Some contender would want that bat. Everybody was looking for offense at the trade deadline, and very little was traded offensively because the prices were exorbitant. I would have eaten a bunch of that contract and cleared up roster space for next year. Would it help them this year and hurt their playoff chances? Maybe if you're getting a hot Stanton, but not if you're getting the one who was sitting 200 just a couple of weeks ago. And if I have to play him in the field, he gets hurt. And he hits better when he plays in the field. So he's a conundrum that I don't need anymore. I don't dislike Stanton. I dislike the production I've gotten from him. Oh, sorry. Kenny Marshall isn't the one that ran the wrong. He is the one that ran the wrong way, but that was early in his career. I want to say that was in like 1960. First or second year of his career, probably. Rick might have more clarity on that. And I believe, I can't remember the team. I want to say it was against the 49ers. Rick will probably have more. Yes, he did. He picked up a fumble and ran the wrong way. Again, not the highlight of his career, but again, it's a highlight that we get to see. He didn't want to get hurt. Yeah. Well, if you can't run, I'm not yelling at you, Dave. If you can't run, then without getting hurt, then something's wrong with conditioning. And speaking of which I'm going to get into this. I want to get into this in this 15 minutes before we bring in Jim Biringer, and then we'll talk some of this, and then we'll come back to baseball later on. And I do have some NFL stuff I want to cover too. We'll bounce around. That's what we do. Speaking of guys getting hurt and medical staffs, I mean, I don't know how these guys train. I've talked about this forever. Judge's toe injury, one thing, it's a freak thing. How do you go 3 months? How do you go 3 months with a concussion and nobody does anything about it? Nobody. Part of this might be on Rizzo for not properly voicing the symptoms he was having. But if he was voicing these symptoms and people were checking him out, they should have checked other things than what they were checking. Dangerous for somebody to go out there with a concussion when he was saying he couldn't focus out there. Now, again, if he was keeping them to himself, shame on him. The way I understand it, he voiced some of these concerns to the Yankee medical people and management, and because they couldn't find anything wrong, they kept rolling him out there every day. Well, if you watched him play the last 3 months, you knew there was something wrong with him. He had a pretty good first couple months. You don't just fall off a wall where pitches you would normally destroy, you were missing by a foot. Yep, still 10. This is the fantasy football. I would mention it in another chat and probably fill 2 more before next Sunday. Up to you. We can try. I mean, here's what I'm going to do. If guys have interest, and I'll put it in a few more places. I might even post it. I don't know. I'll post it somewhere, maybe to one of the groups, maybe John's group, that we need 2 people. I guess we won't try to go to 14. I'd like to go to 14, but I don't think we can get there. But CA, thanks for doing all that as well. So if anybody here has not gotten in, please do. I know a lot of you have. Still won the game, and he flipped the ball, so it was a safety, not a touchdown. It would have been he held the ball. See, how would that have worked? Once he crossed the line of scrimmage holding onto the football, it was a safety. You can't score a touchdown for the other team. You can drop the ball into the end zone before you reach the end zone. They can recover it. He can't run the ball for a touchdown. So, yes, Rick, you're absolutely right. It was a safety. And actually, I don't know what Kenny's comment was now. I know that he mentioned him running the wrong way. He didn't mention touchdown. Yeah, sure, right. If he just ran and held on to the ball, which I think he dropped after he crossed the end zone, it doesn't really matter at this point. It was a safety either way, unless he flips it before he gets in. Then it's a touchdown if they recover it. Not a Hall of Fame moment. No, I agree. But listen, is there any Hall of Famer that hasn't had a non-Hall of Fame moment? Look at John Unitas playing in a Charger uniform at the end of his career. Look at him throwing, big interceptions. Look at him not able to play in the Super Bowl against the Jets. Those aren't Hall of Fame moments. Terry Bradshaw. Tom Brady had non-Hall of Fame moments. So, again, Jim Marshall, I think, belongs. Back to Rizzo and back to the Yankees. It's an interesting week. The Yankees are 5-5. They've big series with the Astros. They've won 2 out of 3 so far. I really think today's a big game for them. They still sit a couple and a half behind, I think, in the wild card race. But now Rizzo's out for a bit. You may not see Rizzo the rest of the year. Once they get these post-concussion issues, they can last all year. I know a couple players in the past few years in baseball have sat out the remainder of seasons because of them. I mean, I would not count on Rizzo getting back anytime soon. The Yankees lose Herman, who really has only pitched a couple of good games this year, including a perfect game. And I've got my problems with Herman anyway. You've seen Domingo Herman pitch his last game of the Yankees in my mind. I mean, he's seeking treatment for alcoholism and a drinking problem, which is a bit redundant. Sorry. And in that, you take that just for itself, and I have sympathy. The man has a sickness. But what really brought this to a head, and ironically, he was supposed to start a game this year, and they didn't feel he was prepared to start mentally. So they started a reliever. He came in the middle of that game and pitched well. Well, you couldn't pitch in the beginning. How can you pitch in a 5th or 6th inning? And later on, there was a violent situation in the clubhouse with Herman that prompted the Yankees to push him towards rehab. And the reason I say, again, he's going to seek help, and I hope he gets it. But this has now become a couple of issues with the Yankees in the last 3 years. If you remember, he was arrested in his home country for domestic abuse, beat up his wife. I said then they should cut ties with Domingo Herman. And if it's a case of they're keeping him because, well, he's too good to give up, well, get rid of him. Don't lay your hands on a woman. I have sympathy for people that have substance abuse problems. I do. I give people second chances. I would not have given Domingo Herman a second chance for putting his hands on his wife. If you're going to tell me, well, it's because he had a drinking problem, well, it doesn't excuse it in my mind. Sorry. And so now the Yankees hit a big slate, and getting Cortez back yesterday was huge. He was nasty yesterday. If he pitches like that the rest of the year, now the Yankees have 3 starters. We still got to find some way to cobble together 2 more, because Severino Friday night went out and gave up a freaking 100 runs again, and has shown that he is just, and again, I have said this 100 times. It is players come back. They can have bad years and come back. They can regress and come back. It's one thing to do that in general. It's another thing to do it in New York. You've seen Gleyber Torres has never been the player he was when he got moved to shortstop, started to get booed, struggled. Now he's never recovered that form that he had before the Yankees made that stupid move. And I've seen it 100 places. Once Chuck Knobloch went bad, he couldn't come back here. And the Yankees have shown a propensity not to trade guys because they're afraid what they'll do somewhere else. Don't care what they do somewhere else. I care what they do here. Right? So I'm not sure Severino ever recovers. He mentioned last week or a week ago or so, he feels like he's the worst pitcher in baseball when he's out there. Well, you know what? He is the worst pitcher in baseball when he's out there. So how the Yankees fill that third and fourth and fifth spot, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be patchwork, bubble gum and spit, whatever the saying is. Because you've got Cole, Cortez, and Clarkson's pitched pretty well after the first month of the season, well enough to stay in the rotation, well enough to help this team in a pennant race, especially with the bullpen behind him. He doesn't go deep into games, but he's good enough. But what are they going to do at 4 and 5? And the offense has got to be better, right? They wake up for a game here and there. Judge has helped a bit. Rizzo being out isn't going to hurt them necessarily when you figure in what he's done the last 3 months. But listen, if I'm a Yankee, if I'm Aaron Judge, I'm thinking you guys are telling me I'm healthy enough to go out there. You sent a guy out there for 3 months with a concussion. This next few weeks for me for the Yankees is important. If they fall backwards in a wild card race, I'm shutting Judge down. I'm not risking him doing further damage. And you guys go, it's a toe. The base is the most important part of any athlete's body. Players have ruined careers. Dizzy Dean's career got ruined with a broken toe because he changed his motion and hurt his arm. Oh, Brady's not in the Hall of Fame. Brady's just retired. You have to wait. I think 5 years. I know the baseball's 5 years. Only one man. Today's trivia question should be simple. Don't Google it. Only one man has ever been elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame without waiting the 5-year waiting period. It's an easy question for those who know. What the hell is that? Ain't the same player who had a drink from ramen and pitch a no-hitter. He is the same player. Yeah. Herman, yes. He has a drinking problem. And pitched a perfect game this year, if that's who we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about somebody else. There was a lot of guys in baseball who've had drinking problems. I'm all right with that. Some of the best pitchers in the history of baseball. Christy Matthews. Great pitchers. I'm okay. Guys have problems. I want to help them. But Herman putting his hands on his wife. Not forgiven. I have sympathy for your illness. They don't care about old guys smoking pot. No, it's different. Kenny, you're smoking for your enjoyment or even medicinal purposes. You're not addicted. You don't have a problem that's affecting you in other portions of your life. I assume I don't have cameras to follow you around with yet. But no. I mean, I think they're totally different. I know you're kidding, but when I say illness, I'm not talking about even recreational use of drugs. I mean, again, some are worse than others. Alcohol. Just watching something with Robin Williams, a video clip earlier today talking about alcohol being like a grade 4 drug. It's listed there with all the others. I watched you. We did a great job, you and Drew. Thank you, Drew. Drew did a great job too, putting some information together for us to be able to kind of talk intelligently about each team. And We went a lot longer than I normally would have in that show, but that's fine. There was a lot to cover, and I enjoyed it. And we're going to have Drew on Fridays more often. So during the MLB update portion of our shows, Nestor had to be effective for the Yankees to have any chance. Agreed. Listen, well, the Yankees have taken 2 out of 3. Schmidt pitched on Thursday night, pitched very effectively, I thought. As I said, Severino got knocked all over the ballpark, as he has forever. And Nestor has to be effective for the Yankees to have any chance in any game. Right? Not had to be effective. Change the D to an S. He has to be effective for the Yankees to have any chance. And he needs to pitch like the Nestor of last year. And hopefully he will. I mean, listen, the Astros aren't an offensive juggernaut by any gauge, but they're still a really good baseball team. Again, we'll be joined by Jim Biringer coming up here. We're going to talk some college football as we go forward, by the way, as well. And then we'll jump back into some NFL and Major League Baseball as well. If you're going to fight, do it like the kid in the hockey video. Did you send it to Jim? I'll have to ask Jim about that when it comes up. That was awesome. And there was a big fight yesterday, too. I think Kenny mentioned it. Or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Kenny. It was somebody else on a Facebook post. Tim Anderson from the White Sox and Jose Ramirez from the team formerly known as the Indians got into a pretty good yesterday. As baseball brawls go, that was a pretty good one, I thought. Let's forget the last place team and talk about the first place team. Go Orioles. Listen, the Orioles have played great. We talked a lot about the Orioles on the Major League Baseball update Friday. The Orioles deserve all the credit in the world, and I was going to get more into the Orioles later. I'm talking about the Yankees. And by the way, the difference between last place and third place isn't that much, which still is just the third loser in the league division. I play to win everything, right? My mantra has always been second place is just a first loser. I'm not giving myself any medals for second place. And we'll talk more about the Orioles after we get through with Jim and talk some college football with all the manic moves that have gone on. But again, the Orioles, to touch on that for a second, playing tremendous baseball, leading the division after the Rays got off to that amazing start that they got off to. They've got a 3-game lead now. They're 27 games over 500. That's not a small number, guys. They've won 3 in a row. I'm a little disappointed. And there's reasons for this. And if you watch a Major League Baseball update, you'll hear a lot of talk about it. Some of these teams that are maybe a little bit ahead of where they thought they'd be, like the Orioles, I do not think they thought they'd be 27 games over 500 at this point in the season. And I think they did not want to trade a lot of their young collateral for, mediocre starters, let's say. I mean, they did bring in John Flaherty, which will probably help them. He'll lead some innings up. He won't kill you. But they didn't want to go out and give up what it would have taken to get a Dylan Cease, even a Jordan Montgomery, certainly not a Scherzer or a Verlander. So they could use some pitching, but who can't? Everybody could use some pitching. We'll talk more about that. Orioles doing what they need, doing what they needed. Great pitching. One place I will hold them accountable. You saw what the Rangers did this year. When you're this close and you're this good, you got to decide whether you want to go for it or not. And the Orioles, I'm not saying they're not going for it. And maybe they just trust in what they have. But to really be able to secure themselves for the playoffs, I think another starter, a better starter than John Flaherty, number one, would have been a priority. And I'm sure it was. The prices teams had to pay were exorbitant. And they could probably even use a Flaherty on top of a Dylan Cease or even a Jordan Montgomery, who I still am not a big fan of Jordan Montgomery. I haven't watched him pitch for a long time. But again, I'm not going to discount what they've done so far. I mean, A lot of times these trade deadline trades don't work out. I mean, look at Giolito's first start with the Angels. He got rocked all over the ballpark. Scherzer had a nightmare first inning. Ended up striking out 9, didn't pitch horrendously in his first start with the Rangers, but it was awful. Verlander loses to the Yankees. Didn't pitch badly, but still, not all of these trades work out. Hang on one second, guys. Got to make sure this isn't Jim. Jim Barrett. Going to be like 10 or 15 minutes after 9. Got to play. No problem. No problem. So we got a few minutes before Jim comes in. We'll talk some more baseball as well. Oh, sorry, Kenny. Yankees need to revamp the whole team. I don't disagree. Again, I said at the trade deadline, I wouldn't be buyers if I was the Yankees. Way too many holes to fill. Left field, third base, starting pitching. The bullpen's okay. Catching. Yeah, I talked about, let me go back to the injuries again. Who's paying attention to injuries on the Yankees? Rizzo plays 3 months with a concussion. Trevino has a hairline fracture in his wrist in the spring, and the Yankees go, don't worry, tape it up and go on out there. Well, now you can play with injuries. I'm sorry, you can play if you're hurt, but if you have injuries, you shouldn't be risking guys' careers. And we wonder why Trevino was so bad all year when he was so good last year. And last year could have been an aberration. But again, if I'm an Aaron Judge and the doctors are telling me, hey, you're okay to go out there, do I have a lot of confidence when I see the stuff going on around me? Looking forward to catching all the Astros and O's series. That could be a great preview. Yes, I agree. I still have, and I said this Friday on the MLB update. We'll talk about all season. Some of my predictions have not borne out. Not too horrible, I guess. I mean, my prediction was still Astros and Braves in the World Series. I have not changed that. And I do have the Astros winning. And getting Verlander, I think, helps them a lot. Like, sure, people are committed to fantasy football. It's painful if people are not involved. No serious fantasy player wants to be walkover. Agreed. And of the guys that we've got in there, I haven't seen anybody that I would be concerned about. The guys that are in there I know are you, Rick, me, CA, Dan Harris. Hopefully, with Dan's situation, he can stay on top of things. He's got a lot going on, but I'm sure he will. Who else is in there? Nick Bodkins is in from Let's Talk Sports. He's very serious into these things. Tanner D. I'm really not too concerned about that. Anthony, I think, is in. I'm sure Anthony will represent well. And one of the reasons I think we're going to do this, and we can still do a pick'em within it. I'm not doing a pick'em league this year because, again, other than 5 guys, we didn't have. And again, I'm not blaming people. Things come up, you forget. People have trouble with the system. I think Kenny did last year getting in. Rick, I know, did. Again, why fool around with that stuff? So we'll stick with the fantasy. We'll talk about that, and maybe we'll do a survivor pool. What I'll do is a survivor pool. That way, when it's over, it's over. So I'm going to start a survivor pool for the league before the season starts. Get in. You pick one team a week. You can only pick one team one time. And we'll see who the king of the hill is saying at the end of the day. But I agree, Rick. If you got in the league, be serious about playing, please. What's with these teams grabbing old and used up pitchers when the minors are full of live arms? This isn't a new thing, Kenny. Right? We always go for guys like Flaherty. Always go for decent. Well, I mean, again, the haul wasn't overwhelming for Jack Flaherty. I'm just using him as an example to your point. This isn't new. Remember the Yankees brought in Steve Trout 100 years ago from the Cubs, thinking they and George said to, I'm trying to think, it was during one of Billy's stints, I think. And he goes, I just want you to pen it. Steve Trout was atrocious. He had one good year with the Cubs. Don't know that he was having that great a year when he got traded, and he stunk it up here. We've seen 100 guys come into New York, and I'll focus on New York, but it happens everywhere. They don't trust the kids, or they're worried about service time, Kenny, which comes back to your point about money. Because when you give guys service time, it gets them closer to arbitration eligibility and closer to free agency. So they don't want to bring these kids up. So, it is what it is. I don't disagree, though. And by the way, less arms in the minors than we've had before. We've talked about, we shouldn't be expanding and all of this other stuff because of lack of quality pitching and lack of quality players in general to be able to add 2 more teams. Don't forget, you've contracted 40 minor league teams. So there is a much less talent in the minors than there was 3 years ago. Thank you, Rob Manfred. Dumbass. Sorry. I don't know what the Angels are doing. I thought they were sellers. Well, they were sellers, Anthony, until they decided they wanted to. Again, I talked about this too, and we'll talk about this topic right now. And we talked about it a little bit on the Major League Baseball update. I've talked about it recently. Once they decided not to trade Ohtani, which was stupid, because again, they could always chase him in free agency later. He's going to hit the open market. Number one, should have traded him. Their decision was to keep him, buy, and show him they were willing to try to win. But who did they bring in here? Giolito was probably a good trade. He'll probably pitch fine. Randall Grinchuk and CJ Cron, nice players, not going to make a huge difference in this pennant race. And the Angels have collapsed. This strategy, to me, will not make them any closer to getting Ohtani. If he doesn't want to come back to the Angels, this will not affect what they do. They've lost 5 in a row, 3 out of the last 7. They were making a run. And to me, the Angels and the Cubs, specifically, I've talked about this as well, fooled themselves by having good runs before the trade deadline, fooled themselves into thinking they were contenders. Well, maybe you're a contender to make the playoffs. That's different than being a contender to win it all. So that caused them, instead of selling, to buy. The Cubs probably even more foolishly, in my mind, even though the record's better and they're still playing okay. They've won, they're 7-3 their last 10. They're 3 games over 500. And what are they in the wild card race here? Where do they stand? 2.5 out, maybe? 1 game out of the playoffs. All right, well, still. I told you during the offseason the Cubs were very poorly constructed. They got a bunch of free agents. This team doesn't win now, they could pay for it for years. Foolish. Foolish for the Angels, who could pay for this for years. They've been paying for their decisions in the front office for years anyway. Mike Trout's going to go his entire career as an Angel and not make the playoffs? Oh, I can't wait. I have my countdown mark. I'm talking about fantasy football, I'm sure. Anthony, we're excited to have you in the league, and we're looking forward to it as well. Not sure it's a lack of talent, but more lack of good coaching. And that plays into it as well, Kenny, for sure. Again, when I say lack of talent, there's less of a volume to coach up, right? So coaching is definitely a problem. I've talked 100 times on this topic as well. The way pitchers are brought along now does not help them. They don't throw. They don't build up their arm strength. They aren't ready to go. You will go to a low minor league game. You barely see starting pitchers go 4 innings. You protect them. You hurt them by protecting them. And the coaching is not good either. I agree. These guys get to the major leagues, they're not ready to pitch. None of them will pitch inside. Or few of them. Angels should take Trout and Ohtani, get a treasure chest of talent and money. Well, they can't do that with Ohtani now. It's over. It's over. They missed the boat to get a treasure chest for Ohtani. Ohtani would have brought back the biggest haul any team ever got at the trade deadline, because you're getting 2 players. You're getting an everyday hitter and a pitcher to go out there every 5 days. and one of the great talents in baseball. And now they don't. They're going to walk. He can walk. They'll get nothing for him if they lose him now, except a draft pick if they make a the qualifying offer to him, which they will. He'll turn it down. He'll hit the free market, and they'll get a draft pick when they lose him to the Giants or the Mariners or the Dodgers. Trout, maybe I would move Trout. But Trout's not going to he's not going to hit the top of the market anymore in trade talks. Still one of the best players in baseball, but the problem is he can't stay on the field. And he doesn't run as much as he did. He's still a great outfielder, great hitter, great power, great player. Can't stay in the field. That impacts, the price you can get for these guys as well. By the way, speaking of Major League Baseball, one note I'll put in here, and later on maybe we'll go through the standings and talk a little more baseball after Jim Biringer should be with us here in the next few minutes. We'll get into college football. Cole Hamels was attempting a comeback with the Padres organization. Cole Hamels had a really nice career with the Phillies, later with the Rangers. Hall of Fame worthy, no, but a really, really good major league pitcher. And he has given up his comeback ambitions and officially retired, I think, as of yesterday. So we wish Cole Hamels well. Classy guy, I thought, really good left-handed pitcher, and hopefully he does well going forward. I should start to make this transition here to college football. So just so you guys know, for comment-wise, what we're going to try to concentrate on here these next half hour, 40 minutes, however long we keep, Jim, we'll probably be, and if you got some hockey questions, we'll throw them in there. But we're going to concentrate on the college football movement. And to get you up to speed, 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, Colorado moved from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. Not a big deal, you say. Well, if the Pac-12 couldn't keep Colorado, how are they going to keep Washington, Oregon? It all comes down to TV money, guys. The commissioner could not put a TV contract together. The best offer they had, it seemed, was a deal with Apple, which was subscription-based. So teams would not know what their take would be. That was not good enough. Washington, Oregon go to the Big Ten. So now you got 4 West Coast teams, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington going to the Big Ten. Next year, teams had to let the conferences know by August 15th of your intentions if you were leaving. We'll talk more about that in a second. So that's domino number 1. Domino number 2, Arizona State, and Utah go to the Big 12. We'll talk about that. So you are left in the Pac-10. After this year, the Pac-12, has Pac-4, Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford. That's it. They're not bringing teams in here to make this a viable. It's no longer a power conference. It's dead. I said Wednesday night they were bleeding out. That was before these moves got made. We'll also talk about the ACC and Notre Dame. And Florida State has pretty much put the ACC on notice, saying, listen, we're really carrying the water for everybody else when it comes to TV contracts. We're locked into a bad TV contract. It's not a matter of when. It's a matter of if. I'm sorry, a matter of if. It's a matter of when we leave the league. But how do they leave? It would cost them $120 million to buy themselves out of their contract right now. They have a TV contract through 26. Plus, if they don't buy themselves out, this grant of rights that they sign allows the ACC to retain the TV rights to Florida State. So they could leave, go to they thought they might go to the Big Ten. They didn't get the offer they thought they were going to get. They could possibly go another league, and the ACC would have the broadcast rights to the games. So this is the type of things we're going to jump into with with Jim Biringer here. I mean, again, what are the four teams left in the Pac-12 do? Cal and Stanford might get sucked into the Big Ten. Maybe just Stanford if they use that as a lure to get Notre Dame in there. But Notre Dame's got a contract with the ACC that if they join a league, it'll be the ACC. It's a mess. It's a mess. It's going to be a worse mess. And these teams that are moving we'll talk more about this both with Jim now and on Wednesday. Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC. They're the brand in the Big 12. The Big 12 made some moves, Big 12 made some moves, but they don't have a brand name there. Oklahoma and Texas were the brand names. They're going to the SEC. They're not the brand names. Alabama is. Georgia is. They're going to find that out. USC is going to find that out in the Big 10. What are players need a translator? That person, a team member, or player? Well, a lot of them have them. If you're talking about Ohtani or, I know when Matsui was here with the Yankees, he had his own interpreter. Certainly, the pitchers all have their own interpreters. You'll see at times, and I don't see it so much today as I have in the past, your interpreter will go to the mound with the pitching coach. So yes, Anthony, they're definitely, and there's been communication problems in sports and baseball specifically, I guess, going back decades when, the influx of Latino players happened in the 50s and 60s. They had trouble communicating because they didn't know the language. Especially, it really hurt them in the minor leagues, right, when they would first get to this country. I'm making it easy for you. 3-peat, go Dogs. Well, that's not easy, first of all, as it hasn't happened in, 60 years, 50 years, 70 years. How many years? 70 years almost. So, again, while it's entirely plausible, it also doesn't change the fact that the landscape of college football has changed and changed forever. As much as I don't like it, I have to address the realities that we're living in today. See Jim with us. I'll take one more comment, and then we'll get Jim in here. Texas and Oklahoma, they will not rule the SEC in 3 years. They won't. I talked about it this morning a little bit with Jim Jeffcoat on the Mac and Jack show. Oklahoma, to me, would be closer to going Nebraska route than dominating the SEC. I'll tell you that. And Texas hasn't dominated anything in decades, except for a couple of years when Mac Brown was hot. It's just a mess. And they're not, again, there won't be the brand out there. The brand is going to continue to be Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee. That's the brand. Let me I got a banner here for Jim. Let's get it up here. Let's welcome in one of our favorite guests, Jim Biringer. Good evening. Good morning.
Yo, what's going on, boys?
We were going to talk college football, and I immediately went to good evening like we were on the college football huddle, but good morning.
You know what? It's okay. I'll be there soon, too.
So Jim's a little late today because he felt Rick Sherlock was going to be overwhelming him with tough questions, so he'd need to get a couple more minutes sleep.
Absolutely.
So good to have you with us, Jim. It's been a crazy, crazy week. I mean, we're going to talk. We usually have you on to talk, and Jim Biringer from Let's Talk Sports, and even probably more importantly from his perspective, fullpresshockey.com. We usually have him on to talk hockey. We might get into some hockey. I don't know if there's something important Jim thinks we need to know. But the thing we brought Jim in to talk about today is the manic movement this past week to go on top of the previous manic movements of teams in the NCAA football and the death, basically, of the Pac-12. Jim, my head's still spinning from what's going on this week. And we're not done, probably, because there's going to be the SEC is probably not going to sit on their hands here. Big 12 or Big 10 may not be done. The ACC's probably got to do something, or they're going to get raided here soon. What's your overall take on what we watched this week?
I saw the death of a sport that I really loved happen within 12 hours. That's what I saw happen.
started by Colorado. I mean, again,
well, that's a good move by Colorado, though, to go back to the Big 12. That's a smart move.
Yeah, I'm not commenting on that. The fact that what would seem to be just a small ripple in the lake turns into a tidal wave. Colorado moving with the way their program has been for the last 2 decades doesn't seem like all that big a deal. Deion makes a difference, but it hurt the Pac-12 in a sense that if you can't keep Colorado, how are you going to keep Washington and Oregon and get a TV deal? It wasn't going to happen.
I mean, it started really last year or last fall, I guess.
Well,
we should say with USC, UCLA goes to the Big Ten
about a year ago, yeah.
And then, and the biggest problem is the Pac-12's not getting a TV deal. And that's the biggest thing. Like, I've been listening to a lot of college sports radio the last couple of days and talking with some people. And I said, wait a minute. So you're telling me that everybody that went to the Big 12 is getting $31.7 million a season. Oregon and Washington, UCLA, USC are getting, I don't know, whatever, 40 to 50 million a season. You're telling me there wasn't a television deal out there for the Pac-12?
Not with USC and UCLA gone, no.
No, but I'm saying even if you were able to keep Oregon and Washington, you still had a good conference. Like, there was still a good conference there. And the problem is you got ESPN on ACC and SEC. You have the Big Ten going to Fox, NBC. Like, it's like everywhere. And look, the Pac-12 died. And I know everybody joked. We all joked Pac-12 after dark. And, is the Pac-12 relevant? All this stuff. The problem is it's just not the football program that's affected. Yeah, everybody wants to talk about the football program. Every other sport now, you're talking about 3,000 plus miles of travel.
I talked about this with Larry Sorensen on the college football huddle Wednesday night, and there's talk that what should be done is a football, and it may be too late once this is all put into place, that football programs should be treated differently and the rest of the sports stay in their regional conferences the way that they were, because the travel part affects football a whole lot less. You're traveling once a week.
Right.
These other sports are traveling all week long. How are you gonna go to the West Coast from Rutgers to I don't know, the girls soccer team, whatever? How are they gonna go out and spend a week out in
US?
California? Yeah. I mean, it's very, and I know this is where the money's generated that supports those programs. I get it, but those programs are going to have awful trouble
maintaining.
And education. We still are there to get an education. 90% of the kids there, or 95% of the kids in these schools are there for an education. The sports program support it a lot. I get it, but
yeah, but I mean, the Pac-12 not only was a good sports conference, it was a good academic conference. Very good academic conference.
Well,
very good.
That's why, again, if the two Pac-10 schools who may still come out of this okay might be Stanford and Cal if the Big Ten decides to go to 20, because they match up academically. If not,
I could see Stanford going independent for a little bit, though.
Yeah, there's talk about both of them doing it, but it's so hard. I mean, look at there's only like 4 independents left now, and it's hard to schedule.
Yeah, four independents are Notre Dame and Navy's a part of a conference. Army and Air Force, right? No, Air Force is part of the Mountain West.
No, yeah, they're not. There's Army, Notre Dame, and I can't remember. Hang on, I can tell you, because Liberty was, and they joined a conference now. I think they joined Conference USA, I think. There's so much movement, it's hard to keep them straight.
Yeah, I know. Like, everybody's moving everybody everywhere. But to me, like, going back to this merger thing, it's not a merger, but you saw it, right? The Big Ten started this. The SEC started this. And you could go back to the real beginning when the Big East got destroyed, when the ACC took everybody.
Yeah, 2010 and 12. That was the roots of this. Yes.
Yeah, like when Miami left to go to the ACC, West Virginia goes to the Big 12. Like, the Big East just gets destroyed. But for you, I mean, at least with the Big 12 getting Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, at least you have that like little 4 section. like right there, like the travel from like where everybody is outside of like Cincinnati, and I think there's somebody else that's in there.
You got the UCF out.
UCF, like, okay, like UCF's the farthest and Cincinnati's the farthest you really have to go. Okay, that's not bad. But the map, if you look at these maps, it's crazy to think that the Big 12's got 16 teams, the Big 10's got 18 teams, the SEC's what at 14, 16 now?
16, I think. Yeah,
it's ridiculous, and I don't want to see
once Oklahoma and Texas get there. Yes,
and we've been talking about this for years on the College Football Huddle that it's just about money. We're headed towards 2 super conferences. It's going to be like pro football, and I agree with Larry Sorsen. There's got to be a way where you can just have the football be aligned with something and then have everybody else in the rest of the conferences, because that just makes the most sense at this point. Now, if you look at it, obviously it's all about TV dollars, and the Big 12 has a nice TV deal with ESPN right now. ACC does too. The big elephant in the room is when's Notre Dame joining a conference? Because that's I was hearing a lot of callers that say that Notre Dame, it's either the Big 10 or the ACC. Right now they play 5 ACC games a year. That's where they are in all the other sports. But do they make the jump because most of their rivals are in the Big 10?
Well, the problem is that's correct, and there's talk that Stanford may be used as a lure for Notre Dame because they're on Notre Dame's schedule every year, that they might bring in Stanford to lure Notre Dame in. The problem, though, is along with that agreement with the ACC to play 5 games a year, there's a contract that says if Notre Dame gives up their independence, they're going to join the ACC.
Right.
Not that Notre Dame can't buy their way out of that, I'm sure, but there is an agreement in place that you're not going to join the Big 10 or anybody else. You're going to join our league. They screwed up. The ACC screwed up when they let them play a full schedule during COVID because Notre Dame couldn't have had a season otherwise. They should have held their feet to the fire then and said, "Sure, we'll let you in. Sign right here, and you're in this conference for good."
Yeah. Because they play at least 5 to 6 ACC games a year anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a guarantee of 5, I think, a year, yes.
So, I mean, they should have been in the ACC to start because the rest of their programs are in the ACC.
And you know what? Here's the thing. Notre Dame's going to hold this out as long as they can until a couple of things happen, right? Until Notre Dame doesn't have a clear path to the playoff.
Which right now they really don't.
Well, at 6-6, I think they do.
Yeah, but still, it's still going to be tough.
Yeah, it's going to change. By the way, the rules of the 12-team playoff are going to change totally after year 1. They're locked in.
We didn't even get to it. We're not even going to have 6 conference champs.
I know. That's the thing. But they can't. The way I understand it is it can't change for year 1. They're going to have the best 6 conference champions, highest rated conference champions. Which means,
or is it 5 conference champions and an at-large?
No, it's the top 6 ranked conference champions, which you would have assumed before all of this would be the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and then the best American 5, right? It'd probably be AAC, probably could be the Mountain West.
Could be the Mountain West, yeah.
That's what it is. So. Pretty much the 5 power conferences would probably get their champion in. Probably most years.
Yeah.
But now when there's going to be 2, Big 12, listen, Big 12 has done okay with what they've had to work with, but they don't compare at all to the Big 10 and the SEC. There's no brand there. They've got some great football programs.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be a great conference to watch. Don't get me wrong. Those games are going to be great every week.
No brand to carry the conference, though. There's no Alabama. There's no with Oklahoma and Texas gone. They were the brand.
Yeah.
What do they do after this? Utah's a great football program. It's not going to carry the conference.
No, it's not carrying the conference. Cincinnati's a great football program. Ain't carrying the conference.
Their commissioner did a great job getting that TV deal that he got for $31 million or whatever it was a team, because with that, and again, I don't really want to disparage those independent programs, but as a group, that conference, they're getting as much as the SEC is getting right now. Their new contract will kick in, but they're getting the same amount.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. Like the football is going to be great, but I agree. This has turned from a regional sport to a national sport. We just want football. We want helmet matchups every week now. And there better be helmet matchups every week because there should be no more Alabama playing Chattanooga in week 1.
How can they?
Yeah, they can't. I mean, you have 16 teams in your league. You're going right into league play right away.
Hopefully it won't be the case this year, but hopefully in 2 years and going forward, that will be the one saving grace from this. But I'm not excited about losing. And again, whatever region you're in, these things are more important than other regions. Oregon playing Oregon State's a big deal. Washington playing Washington State's a big deal. That's not going to happen anymore. It go away just like Nebraska and Oklahoma. They got a home and home again in like 10 more years. Well, 8 more years, I think, whatever. But yeah, that's a yearly thing. Gone. It doesn't. And the average fan sitting in New York, just a casual fan, goes, who cares about Oregon State? It matters in the world of college football in my mind.
It does because what is it? The final week is always trophy week in college football before you get to championship Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And you had so many trophies on the line. Like, it was awesome. Rivalry week was great.
It matters in those regions. And, I've said forever as this started, my phrase was always, this is a regional sport with national appeal.
Yes.
But now they're trying to reverse that. And the regional appeal won't be there because you're not going to have the regional matchups that you've had historically.
It's just they want to make it into a national thing. And it's a national thing when the playoffs around, when you have big time matchups. And you can have those big time matchups week 1 and stuff, but you ruined the sport that was so good because of the regional appeal.
Let me go to a couple comments here before we move on. We keep going, just so I don't leave you guys. I don't want to leave these guys out of this conversation. And I'll start with the one I was commenting on before I brought you in the room. Kenny says, Texas and Oklahoma. SEC in
no,
they will not.
Absolutely not.
They will not.
Absolutely not.
I really think I was on with the Mac and Jack and Jim show, and Jim Jeff. We were talking about this topic, and Jim Jeffcoat said, and I agree, that Oklahoma has a better chance to become Nebraska than it does to become Alabama when they go to the SEC.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, you still got Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee. Ole Miss is there. I mean, Mississippi State. I mean, Texas A&M is still. I mean,
the teams that have come into the SEC is and I know they're not, programs with a history necessarily. They're good history in these programs, but maybe not Oklahoma and Texas worthy. Texas A&M, Missouri, Arkansas. Have any of them ever become like the first names off the top of your head in the SEC? No.
No, it's always been Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, Florida.
And it still will be. Agreed.
It still will be.
Agreed. Big Ten going to be amazing. Hope my Oregon don't do bad from Anthony Price. Oregon, listen, here's the problem. Again, for me, Oregon, Washington, USC, and USC more than anybody, I think, loses going to the Big Ten because the same thing happens to them. USC was the Pac-12 for decades. Even when they weren't relevant the last couple of years, they were the most
talked about team.
Oregon's got a really good football program. So does Washington. They've been national contenders at different times, obviously, over the last few decades.
Because they were in the Pac-12.
Correct. Their path to the playoff maybe got easier depending on how it changes. Not winning the conference and not being relevant in your conference because just like we talked about in the SEC, the Big Ten is still Michigan and Ohio State.
Michigan State, Penn State. I mean, Wisconsin's starting to turn it around.
Not even Penn State. Ask Penn State about their brand since they went.
They're a brand name. I'm saying they're a brand name. People, Penn State,
I get that, but I'm talking about within the Big Ten.
Oh no, I mean outside of that 1 year, they're.
Listen, until they beat Michigan, Ohio State, I want Penn State fans to shut up. I don't care how bad you beat Utah in the Rose Bowl. Until you beat those two schools.
So a caller on the College Sports Radio said this was revenge by the Big Ten getting all the Pac-12 schools out so they don't got to play them in the Rose Bowl and lose anymore.
Right. That's a good point. And by the way, Oregon will do okay. They're going to have a pod, especially if they bring in 2 more teams or even 1 more team out west. there'll be a pod where they can play each other every year. Travel-wise, you almost have to do that.
Yeah.
Now, fair, if the only teams they get to play every year in the other conference is Michigan and Ohio State, because that's what they're going to want to see with USC.
Yeah.
But at least they'll have some other teams to match up with. So let's see what else we got here. Oh, this is on a hockey note. Did you see?
No, I am not no, absolutely not.
You have to watch it because it's the fight.
The one dude's just fighting by himself, fighting a shadow. It's great. He didn't want to be left out.
That was the part that was hilarious. The rest of it was just a stupid fight, but I was actually laughing out loud watching that. Title IX will go by the boards, so the travel will not be so bad. So you're saying that the rest of these sports are going to fold? I don't think that's going to be the case either.
No.
Again, it's important for them to get these kids to the school, regardless of the sport that they play. So Title IX won't go away, and these sports won't go away, but it's going to get much, much harder.
I mean, I just think off the top of my head for the Big Ten, like, all right, so you have Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. That's 4 on the West Coast alone. So are they going to be in the division with Wisconsin, Illinois, Nebraska?
Yeah, if they're going to stay with 2 divisions, which you might have to go to 3, I'm not sure. They may be the first conference with 3 divisions.
They might have to be. Oh, well, again, This is turning into pro football. There's an AFC and an NFC with subdivisions.
There is a clamor to go to that. One league and then split it up regionally like the football does. Everybody's one conference. Or 2 conferences, whatever, East and West you could have. Well, you can't, actually, not the way these things are split up.
No.
Do away with the conferences, have one big conferences that we know them today, have one league with different divisions and regions. At least we get back to regional football that way, but then the historical conferences are gone.
Well, the historical conferences are gone as it is now. I mean, there was always change. I think the Pac-8 started, and then they became the Pac-10 and the Pac-12, and like all that stuff. But I mean, at least it was still regionalized. I mean, 100 years of the Pac-12 is gone.
By the way, and I know it's a small point compared to everything that we've talked about here, but it's annoyed me since the realignment started. If you're running an institution of higher learning, can't we at least count correctly? Because why is the Big Ten still the Big Ten?
They're the Big 18 now. I
mean, I know you don't want to lose your historic conference name, but you're willing to blow up college football every other way. So I don't understand why you can't at least get the right number of teams.
This is just call them the Midwest Conference.
And Anthony, by the way, you're right. Oregon's doing a lot of traveling, but every team in all of these conferences is going to have doing. I mean, especially the Big Ten. Yeah. Every team's going to do a lot of conference.
Well, it's coast to coast now, Big Ten.
Right? Can't wait for that 10 o'clock Rutgers USC matchup.
And that was another thing. So this was another thing somebody brought up. Oh, well, the Pac-12's not going to – those Pac-12 teams are not going to be playing late games anymore. Since when?
Sure.
They still got to fill out a schedule on a Saturday night.
Absolutely.
This was like, oh, so we don't have to be playing at 10 o'clock on the East Coast. You still might be. No. Especially if you have Maryland going out to Oregon to play.
This was part of the Big Ten's strategy here was going coast to coast is they can now dominate the TV coverage from noon until midnight.
Right.
They have games all through that period. Every Saturday, you'll see that. Yeah. So, again, the travel's going to be, again, for football, it's not as bad because you're only doing it once a week. Look at these other sports are really going to struggle. Good morning to Waldo, Billy Pulver. Good to have you with us this morning. Likes the Jets cap. Is that a Jets cap?
Nah, it's not a Jets cap.
Come on. Do you see
get out of here.
It's got that ugly green. Sorry about that. I don't mean that. Only said because he said Jets. So much. Oh, what do we got here? CA going back to 82. So much hate for the 82 SMU Pony Express from the old Southwest Conference. Many love their death penalty. New look at today. Listen, the Southwest Conference, that was a bad look for them, obviously. That was a really good football conference, but as these other conferences started to get bigger and cover more region and recruiting-wise, the SEC, I keep saying that. I can't go SWC for whatever reason. The Southwest Conference went away because they were only in Texas. That hurt.
Yeah, and then the Texas schools went to the other conferences.
Yeah, Texas and Texas A&M, and Texas. I can't remember who else went with them first. Went to the Big 12.
Yeah.
There were 3 schools. I thought. I can't remember the other one.
Was it Texas Tech?
That was later. I think they came later. They left Texas Tech behind. They left Rice behind. They left SMU behind. That was another historically great football conference that has been extinct now for decades. So that was a great football crew. But by the way, there's a great 30 for 30 CA if you haven't watched it. I always seem to come up with these. And I think it's called the Pony Express.
It is. It's really good. I loved it.
If you want to know what went on in that program for about 4 or 5 years, it's a must watch. And
I was listening to Dion the other day during his press conference, and he actually made a really good point about this. He's like, you get all mad about the kids going after the bag of money, but nobody gets upset when the colleges are doing it. Listen, it's the same thing.
I agree. I've heard this from Dion and some other sources as well. And I'm all over the NIL thing. I'm not a big fan of, it's out of control and it's not policed. But you're absolutely right. The NCAA and the conferences are hypocritical, saying, we're going to limit NIL money, but teams can just willy-nilly move to a new conference, all for the name of the dollar.
Yeah, it's all about money. Exactly.
And coaches the same way, not just
coaches leave. Again, you know where I stand on when the coaches leave, when the recruiting stuff should start, all that. I've been a fan of it. When the season officially ends and the national championship is over, that's when it starts.
Agreed.
Not championship Saturday, not your last regular season game. It starts 24 hours after the champion is crowned.
You'll never get an argument from this guy, that's for sure.
No, I'm just saying.
Bet a subnet. What?
What is this?
Hey, you got to start later in the morning, I'm telling you. I'm kidding you, Kenny. Texas and Oklahoma are brand names. Where they are, yes. Now the SEC behind them, they will rule. Saban's losing it. First of all, he lost it. The team's still a good team. He's going to retire eventually. It's going to be very interesting what happens there, by the way. Georgia will fall. Some and the others are of insignificance. Listen.
The SEC is a tough conference despite some of the crappy teams in that conference.
All I'm going to say about this comment right now is go take a look at what Nebraska's done since they left and went to the Big Ten. That's what
they are not good.
That's what you have to watch out for happening here. They could become totally irrelevant. Maybe Kenny's right. Maybe it happens, but I think it's much more likely that it won't.
But if you look at Texas, Oklahoma, neither one of them has been really relevant in the Big 12 either.
They are the brands.
Though. They are the brand, but if you look at it, teams have passed them by in the Big 12.
Well, as far as playing the field,
yeah.
I get that. And there's two different things, though, right? There's playing the field, and then there's the brand of the conference. When you talk about programs' history and the branding, they're the teams with the histories, right?
Yes.
For the most part, have they lived up to that history on the field all the time? No. They have not. I'm pretty sure the Big 12 has yet to have a national champion since it wasn't a BCS era.
Did Oklahoma win a national title in the BCS era?
Bob Stoops won against Florida State. Yes,
and so did Mac Brown.
And Mac, yes, that would have been the SEC too. Mac Brown beat USC when they were going for 3 in a row. By the way, Rick, the last team to have a chance to win 3 in a row was USC, and he got stopped by Texas and
Vince Young.
And everybody.
That was a great game, man. That was a great championship.
One of the best college football games I've ever seen.
I think. What is it? If I think it was USC. If they had made it on 4th down, the game was over.
Kenny says, "Could I see a college sending the ping pong team to California from Maine?" There is no. By the way, there are no Big Ten.
There are no ping pong teams
or teams in Maine. But I get your point.
The only team in Maine is that you need to matter is the Maine Black Bears for ice hockey. That's it.
Yeah, and Kenny, I'm not debating the fact that these smaller sports will suffer. They will. They definitely will. But theoretically, for them to continue, and this is his comment, of course, about Title IX and whatnot, the money's going to have to trickle down from the football programs to keep these teams afloat. these other sports afloat to do all this traveling. And if it doesn't, you're right, they will go away, and that will not be good for the universities themselves. Bet a sub on it. Now I get it. Okay. All right. You're on. One more comment before I ask a couple more questions before we let you go here. What's the state? It was state schools that were upset about SMU. Oh yeah, well definitely it was the Texas and Texas Tech and Texas A&M. They didn't like what was going on at
SMU. No,
for sure. Again, go watch the Pony Express at 30 for 30. Great look at this and some of the shadier sides of college football at the time for sure. And what other team besides Alabama, Georgia, and LSU have been doing anything? Time to sit. I'm not saying they've been dominating, but again, when you've had a history in a league for decades like Tennessee, Florida, again, I'm going to leave Florida out of this part of the conversation, but I'll say Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Tennessee. You throw Ole Miss in there. I think.
Throw Ole Miss in there. You got to throw Ole Miss in there.
When you get to the South, when you get to the deep South of this country, they don't care about Oklahoma and Texas. They care about Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Tennessee. That's what I'm talking about.
Look, people will say, look, down south, like, they're brand names, obviously. Oregon's a brand name. People down there know about them. People down there know about Texas and Oklahoma. But those three teams right there and Tennessee rule the SEC.
Yeah.
Rule it.
Yeah. Now, will the TV ratings be there? Sure. When Oklahoma plays Alabama? Absolutely. But guess what? It's not happening every year. Oklahoma's not playing Alabama every year.
No.
They just aren't. You got to pick three teams, I think, right now. It might even get worse that you can play on a every year basis.
And Alabama and Auburn are going to play every year because they're in the same con. They're going to play Georgia. Yeah. They're going to play Tennessee. And they'll play Florida.
So who runs the Pac-12 now? Oregon. Well, there is no Pac-12 because there's only 4 teams left, and they're not playing.
Pac-4. That's it.
You might as well look for Oregon and State and Washington. Better probably call the Mountain West right now.
I think they're going to Mountain. I think they're going to Mountain West route.
I don't see any other options for them unless they, for some reason.
None of the merger. Like there was talk of a merger. I mean, contracts can be voided, but the grant of rights or whatever it is for the Pac-12 to get everybody from the Mountain West is too much money for the Pac-12 to even do.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense for Oregon State and Washington State to join the Mountain West because there's no TV deal in place.
Exactly. The best. And that's why they want, we were talking about this before and we'll revisit it for a second. Either their new commissioner is totally out of his depth, which he probably is. He came from the entertainment world, I believe, and couldn't get this deal done, or he had deals that he didn't bring to the schools because the best one that I've heard about was with Apple, and it was subscription-based, and they already had a bad taste in their mouth because the former commissioner, Scott, was forming one of the first league networks in the Pac-12 network, and they didn't make any money. And Oregon and Washington said, I know I can get exactly this amount of money, although they're not going to get as much as the other Big Ten schools right away. And
who cares? They don't need it. They don't need it.
Well, they do need it, but you can't go to a subscription-based model and never know what your revenue is going to be because they didn't make any money off the Pac-12 network. They made some, but
most of their games were on CBS Sports Network or, I know when they started with the big noon stuff, there were a lot of Pac-12 games there.
But what I'm saying is there was no guarantee. There was
no guarantee money because that deal was just awful.
Right. You can't just have a subscription-based package.
And if that was the only deal on the table, again, what do these TV networks value the Pac-12 at then?
Well, now with 4 teams, they don't value it at anything.
No, but even with everybody everybody was still there.
If the USC and UCLA was there, they would have got a good package. I agree with you there. But with them gone, I think they were in trouble. Oregon and Washington weren't going to drive that. Not naturally.
And then once Oregon and Washington left, Arizona was gone, and then Utah, Arizona State joined them.
At that point, they had no choice.
They had no choice.
Yeah,
it's either you join a conference or you get left in the dust.
Yeah. I was just going to say something too about Pac-12. So, oh, by the way, not to be left out of this, I know the Pac-12, you talked about it at the top, that the Pac-12 has been bashed a lot for their football success the last few years. Don't forget, historically, again, this is a tremendous conference for sports in general. This conference, in all sports, I believe, has more national championships than any university in the country when you cover all the sports.
I think so, yeah.
Football, I think they're behind the SEC only in football national championships. So this is not of insignificance that this conference is just fading into the dark.
And think about how many pros came out of the Pac-12 too. Like pro football players.
Oh, great
like baseball players.
Great players. When you talk about pro players, I would say the Pac-12 might be the top two. I don't know that, and I'll do some research and we'll talk about it another time. But
I would say Pac-12 and maybe
SEC.
Well, I mean, at the time was Big East, but I would say
I
would say ACC too because Miami's there, Florida State.
Well, that's true. You got to account for teams that have moved around and moved into conference.
Yeah, exactly.
Miami sent the majority of their players to the NFL before they joined the ACC.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They were still a Big East team.
Right. Or even an independent.
Yeah.
So, what's Rick got here? Kenny, just like the WNBA with 1K fans show up. Oh, God. The WNBA always gets bashed on this show. The football and basketball programs will need to pay the bills. By the way, you want to see a funny bit about the WNBA, and I'm going to get in trouble for this. I know Kenny's wife's probably listening. Bill Burr, Bill?
Yeah,
great comedian. He's hilarious. He's got a great bit if you can ever find the on YouTube somewhere or on Facebook, talking about women's sports and why they shouldn't be paid equally with men. And
it's actually pretty good. I've seen it.
It's very funny, and it kind of is talking about what Rick says here. There's nobody in the stands watching you. What do how can you get equal pay? I mean, I'm going to get all kinds of letters now. I know. I get in trouble every time I talk about this. Ole Miss. This is blind. Ole Miss has got a decent brand. Sorry. I mean, maybe they don't have great, year after year history, but NFL can easily be the subsidiary for the bullet train network across the country instead of the taxpayers. I don't think we're getting a bullet train across the country, but I'm not paying for it. I kind of agree with you. Kenny says you can't take the money from the big boys, but what's he say? I kind of agree, but you can't take the money from the big boys. And again, I lose some of the context sometimes when I sit on these for a while. Tennessee, when have they been in the hunt? Just last year.
Just last year they were in the hunt.
Just last year.
Until their quarterback got hurt.
Right. I mean, it's not even that far in the past, Kenny. Before we finish up here, we haven't touched on this. The ACC, we touched a little bit on them, but Florida State has pretty much said to them, it's not a matter of if, but when we leave, because, we're tired of being the people that drive the horrible contract that they have. Because of
if I'm the commissioner of the ACC, I'm going to the networks, and I know it's supposed to be whatever it's 2031, however long this TV deal is last. I would say, hey, look,
36, by the way.
All right, it's 36. I would say, hey, look, I'm going to ESPN, and I'm saying, look, bud, we need to renegotiate this contract, and it needs to start next year where everybody's getting more money, or else we're losing teams. Because don't forget, ESPN is the one that has the ACC and the Big 12 right now. And if they start losing even more teams.
If Florida State goes, Clemson's going.
100%. Yeah.
But can either one of them afford to go right now? We talked about the grant of rights. I mean, it would basically, you got to buy out number one that they'd have to pay, which by all accounts right now would be $120 million to get themselves out of their current situation.
Which I think it's going to wait a couple years till that number comes under $100 million.
Which also doesn't take into effect the grant of rights, which means if you don't take care of that, the ACC retains your TV rights. So theoretically, a team, and not just Florida State, but any team in a league that has these grant of right agreements, and there aren't a lot. The ACC, I thought, was the only one, but you mentioned the Pac-12.
Well, they were trying to get a grant of rights deal.
Yeah. Oh, they're trying to. Right. So
but the Mountain West has one.
Oh, do they? So again, if you don't work your way out of that deal, that agreement, then they retain your TV rights. So theoretically, Florida State could go play in the SEC, and the ACC will be broadcasting their games at home.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty bad idea to me. So you got to find a way. Number one, I don't know why these teams lock themselves into these. Well, the ACC thought they had done a great deal locking themselves in for 25 years, but in retrospect, not so much. Or maybe it is a good thing because maybe that's what would keep the league together. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think I think you said it off the top. I think if the ACC and the commissioner put their foot down the COVID year with Notre Dame.
Well, by the way, again, you're right, Kenny. Not 1 year, but they do have some history there. They've won national championships. Peyton Manning had a great run there. They've had other good runs when Phil Fulmer was there, competing for the SEC every single year. T. Martin had their quarterback, and they were winning national championships. So again,
but I agree with you. If they had put their foot down with Notre Dame that COVID year, the conference is. I think they're starting to renegotiate a new deal right now.
They missed their boat. They missed the boat big time, and I don't know why they did it that way. But again, they were happy to accommodate them because I guess they didn't have the foresight of what was about to happen.
No, guess not.
So again, they've got till August 15th to.
Isn't like JP Morgan getting like associated with Florida State now? Or some investment bank to start doing like looking into it or something to buy them out of the contract or something.
That's the only way they're going to have to do it. They're going to have the financial institution to help you because it's going to be very complicated to get out of one of these agreements if that's what they want to do. But they're going to do that. Number one, they got to do it by August 15th if they want to join a league next year. Number two, they don't have a league to join because nobody's given them an offer.
No, so they got to stay with the ACC right now.
I would think they cannot go. Just like, you don't quit a job without another job, right? Unless you're stupid. They're not going to leave this league without another league to go to.
Right.
Because, and again, I find it very interesting that, they're waving their bully pulpit here as they start to ascend back to relevance. They weren't doing this. They weren't saber rattling.
They weren't doing this a few years ago.
When they were going 4-8 or whatever, they weren't doing this. So again, we'll see. What do we got here? Manning didn't win a national title. I agree. I said T. Martin. I was wrong. A better quarterback than Manning. T. Martin. He won a national championship. What else? Notre Dame we talked about. I don't see Notre Dame going anywhere right away.
Not right now. No, I think they'll let it play out right now.
But there's a couple. They're the one as far as teams that could do something. They're the big chip.
They're the next. I think they're the next domino to fall in this thing.
Yeah, and I think that will determine what happens with the ACC and in some regard the Big 12. You might see the ACC in a Big 12. I mean, Big 12. Look, they've done a good job with getting a TV contract, getting a good job bringing some good football teams in. And again, I think there's going to be some fun games there. There always are.
Oh yeah.
Again, with the spotlight that's going to be shown starting next year on the Big Ten and the SEC, they're going to get lost.
This was one of my other points I wanted to bring up right here.
Yep, bring it up.
What's the ideal TV spot right now, right? Like, because you got Fox at big noon. Either it's Big Ten. We know NBC's got nighttime football on Peacock and or NBC with the Big Ten. CBS has got that 3:30 time slot with the SEC.
And some of Notre Dame.
And some of Notre Dame at 4 or whatever. But most of Notre Dame's games have been on Peacock recently.
Yeah. Not shocking.
Not shocking. The Big 12's got their games. ESPN's got games on at like noon as well. Fowler and Herb Street at night.
For me, the big spot will always be the same. 3:30 SEC game of the week.
CBS, right?
CBS. The fact that it'll be on ESPN is going to kill me when it happens. I think that starts next year, maybe.
Yeah.
maybe 25. I'm not sure. But that spot, and it hasn't been quite the same since Vernon Lindquist retired.
Yeah, I know.
I loved that game. I wanted everything I had to do out of the way.
Or they would put it at night sometimes. It would usually be, like, if it was Alabama, LSU, sometimes it would be at night.
Once in a while. Yeah, but that window was always my favorite.
I love the 3:30 window, man. Yep. That was my favorite window.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we didn't even talk about the bowl games. Like, the tradition of the Rose Bowl is completely gone.
That's a great point. I mean, I think last year, I guess, will be...
this year will be the last one, right?
This year will be the last traditional matchup of Big Ten and Pac-12, yes. And again, it hasn't even always been like the champions for quite a while.
Right.
But the Rose Bowl still, and the Rose Bowl actually had a lot of power in a lot of the playoff conversation because they were going to hold on to that 4:45 window on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
They weren't going to let that go, but now the Rose Bowl just becomes part of the rotation for the playoff. And they're like,
playoff ruined this thing, man.
It's ruined everything. I agree.
Playoff ruined everything. And don't tell me it's not going to 16 teams, because it's going to 16 teams.
I'll tell you that, but I'll get sued if I come up with my...
Yeah, I know. But I'm saying, somebody's like, oh, it's going to stay at the 12 for a while. I'm like, no, it's not. After 1 year, they're going to 16 teams. Because the Big Ten and the SEC is going to want as many teams in that thing as possible.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen. Now, unfortunately, see, I wanted 16 teams with the plan that I had when we had all the leagues that we had then. And I thought it would be great to get all these other league champions in there and still have plenty of at-large
bids.
Now you're going to have a 16-team league, and you're going to have, 12 teams from the Big Ten and the SEC.
Right.
That's not going to be a lot of fun. John likes to tell me that the college football playoff is just one giant participation trophy activity, and he's an SEC elitist, which he's proud to say himself. He's probably not going to be complaining when 8 of the teams from the SEC are competing for the championship, which is
losing the first round.
And losing the first round, right? So it's just ugly.
Ugly stuff.
Before we let you go, is there any hockey news we should be aware of before I let you go? It's very weird not to talk to you about hockey on a Sunday, but
yeah, but you know what? Big news in college football. I mean, can't wait till Wednesday. Can't wait till Wednesday.
So
the big thing is all right. So the Pittsburgh Penguins and obviously Erik Karlsson with San Jose Sharks, like that's been heating up. There's potential talk a trade could be done by today, the end of today. We'll see what happens. Pittsburgh had a 48-hour buyout window after they re-signed Drew O'Connor in arbitration. That Kyle Dubas doesn't like to do that. Kyle Dubas, by the way, is the new president of hockey operations and removed the interim tag as the general. He's now full-time general manager. Gee, what a shock! Didn't see that one coming. Of course, we all saw it coming. And he doesn't like to use the buyout, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can get a deal done because Getzel's hurt, so he's going to be out for 12 weeks, if not longer. Obviously, Patrice Bergeron retired since the last time we talked. Great player, all-time center, two-way center. The goalie market was set by Ilya Samsonov. You saw Gustafsson in Minnesota get 3.75, and then you saw Swayman up in Boston get 3.475. So, and Samsonov was at 3.55. So, nice little market set there. I expect an announcement by David Krejci this week that says he's retired from playing hockey too. So, I mean, just obviously eyes on the trade market. Tarasenko goes up to Ottawa. DeBrincat gets traded to Detroit. Nice little move there. Replacement. Everybody's waiting on Matt Dumba. But as the calendar keeps ticking and ticking and ticking away, we're getting closer and closer to training camp and guys signing PTO. So,
interesting. Well, I got a question for you that I did want to ask before I let you go. I read an article this week on ESPN about Jessica Campbell, who's the first woman head coach in the AHL, and their team. I think the Seattle Kraken affiliate. Right?
Yeah.
Under very trying circumstances, I think the team played their first 20 games on the road, but this team came like a goal short of winning the Calder Cup.
Yeah.
My question is this. Is the NHL going to be any closer than any other sport to having a woman head coach?
I mean, if you see it in the AHL, I think it's going to happen in the NHL. I just don't know when yet.
Yeah.
I think it'll happen, but the timing has to be right for it to happen because we still see the too much recycling going on with coaches.
Yeah. Good point.
If she can prove her worth down in the AHL, that's usually a stepping stone for the NHL.
Yeah. Well, she's looked to be proven.
I mean, you go to a Calder Cup final in your first year as a head coach. That's really good.
Right, and under some trying circumstances, as I read in this article.
The problem is the egos in the National Hockey League locker room. The players have to buy in.
Yeah.
And they have to be on board with it.
In any league.
Right, exactly. You have to be on board with it.
I think it's pretty clear that, to me, and I believe me, I didn't know before I read this article the NHL was maybe that close, because I would have thought the NBA would be the first.
Well, again, I said for years that Becky Hammond was going to be the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, and it never happened.
Well, Pop's going to stay there till he's 100. He just signed another contract.
I know.
She may never get a chance because he may outlive her. And
right.
So, anyway, good stuff. Jim, good stuff. I'd love to have you on Wednesday, and we'll talk some more about what else is going on in the world of college football. We might even talk about games here in the next coming weeks.
What do we got? What is week 0? It's like 4 weeks away?
Week 0 is 4 weeks away. Not a lot going on that first week.
No, because Labor Day weekend's a big weekend.
Oh, yeah. We got games from Thursday to Monday and some great matchups. So we're getting closer. So we'll get you in and start talking some college football on a weekly basis or close to it. If you're
Absolutely.
Because Rick Sherlock is your favorite guy. I mean, he's become your agent, for crying out loud. He's like,
he's petitioning me like every week to get me coming back on. Hey, Rick, can you get me a good deal at least?
Jesus, I have to go into my paycheck now to pay Jim. Thanks, Rick. I hope you're happy. So. All right, Tim. Listen, have a great Sunday. Enjoy your downtime if you're having a little bit, I guess.
A little bit of downtime. Yeah, a little bit of downtime.
But enjoy, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye, buddy. The great Jim Biringer from, where's that light again? Where is that? I think that's that. You know what? I'll bet you it's the window as the sun's coming through it more. Great stuff from Jim. Big contributor, does a lot of shows on Let's Talk Sports, and obviously a major contributor to FullPressHockey.com. Check his articles out there. If you want to get yourself up to speed, I read Jim Biringer, so I know what's going on. It was a good chat. And Kenny, you're right. Listen, I'm going to get rid of some of Kenny's comments here. T. Martin was, again, a national championship winning quarterback in college, which there are a lot of great college quarterbacks who you may not hear of because they don't make it in the NFL. And by the way, to your comment about 30 years ago, it was more recent than Notre Dame's last title. I'll just give that as a point of reference. Just an FYI. Once again, women are equal to men, especially in the mind. Listen, I can't go down this road again. Well, yes, my wife runs circles around me mentally, but then most people do. It's just, again, the best of the best can't beat each other. That's all I'm saying. I probably got myself in trouble with my other woman comment. No, we already had that. It was a good chat. Good to have Jim back on. We'll have Jim on the college football huddle frequently as we head towards college football and into the season. Heading to where? TC. What is that? I probably ought to know. I don't know. Anyway, what are we going to get into here? I'm going to go back to some baseball, but you guys, we'll talk about whatever you guys want. I want to get into real quick. I want to look at the NFL inductees. I don't think we'll get into quarterback tiers or anything, but I want to get into the Hall of Fame inductees from last night. Talk about some of them and their careers. And one guy I think is getting a little bit of a short thrift, I think, from the media and whomever in general, and some of the conversation about this year's class. Some controversial people, right? Chuck Howley definitely. I can't believe Chuck Howley was not in the Hall of Fame already. All Pro for 5 consecutive seasons. The only MVP in a Super Bowl on a losing team. Great player with the Cowboys. Should have been a long time ago. Let's see, was he 5-time? I said 5-time first team All Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl MVP. Joe Klecko. I'm not so sure. He went from a 6th-round draft pick to the sack leader in '81, recording 20.5. Before, boy, sorry. I feel like Mitch McConnell. Sorry, this is bad. Or the president. I can't. I watched videos of him, and I'm like, wait a minute, he sounds like me. Joe Klecko played defensive end and defensive tackle, nose tackle. Played a lot inside. Does match up with Jim Marshall pretty well. Again, I think one of the reasons Jim Marshall's not in is because of the guys he was overshadowed by. He was elected to Pro Bowl at 3 different positions. Joe Klecko probably deserves to be here. Part of the famous New York Sack Exchange. They never won anything. I think probably the second most deserving person elected is Darrelle Revis. Shutdown cornerback. 4-time All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. Played, and Jet fans don't like this, but he was a Super Bowl champion with the Patriots. First ballot Hall of Famer. Not much to say. He was a dominant player at his position for most of the time that he played. Ken Riley, overlooked. 14-year career, long career at that time with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was a 6th-round selection. He did pass away in 2020, by the way, so he didn't make it long enough to get here. He's tied for the 5th most interceptions in history in the NFL with 65. That's not the way I normally judge cornerbacks. I would judge them more by passes defense, because the guys who are really good don't have a lot of interceptions because they don't get thrown at. So Ken Riley, I'm going to say, because of where he played and the time he played, his consistency, I'll put him there. He was never named to a Pro Bowl. If he was a first-team All-Pro one time, 1983, his last season. Again, sometimes the number of interceptions is misleading, especially today. Maybe going back in time, they were a bit more relevant. If you intercepted a lot of passes, it was a big deal. I think now not intercepting passes is a big deal. Joe Thomas, again, to me, another no-brainer. Played 10 years with the Browns, was almost always the best player at his position. Made the Pro Bowl every year he was in the league. And he was, I believe, just one of 5 players in NFL history to make the Pro Bowl each of his first 10 seasons. 6 first-team All-Pros. He gets a little bit looked over because of playing for the Browns, who were not very good for pretty much all his career. And to his credit, never demanded a trade. Never, even when Peyton Manning wanted to recruit him to come to Denver. When he went to Denver, he did not go. Zach Thomas, I talked about. He played 12 years, I guess. Played with the Dolphins mostly, finished up with the Cowboys. I'm just not seeing it. I mean, he was a first-team Pro Bowler 5 times. But I just never saw a guy who dominated games. He only had 20 sacks for his entire career, 17 interceptions, 4 pick sixes. That's pretty good for a linebacker. 1,734 tackles. Maybe I'm a little too hard on Zach Thomas, and it's because I'm comparing him to somebody I like a lot in Teddy Bruschi. So I don't know. DeMarcus Ware, great player with the Cowboys and Broncos. His sacks, 117 sacks in his time with the Cowboys, is the most in the franchise history. I wanted to talk a little bit with Jim Jeffcoat about that and DeMarcus Ware, and I did not get that chance. To me, possibly the most influential person elected last night and the least talked about, Don Coryell. Now you'll say Don Coryell didn't even win a Super Bowl as a coach. I agree. But you should be electing also people who are influential in the way the game is played. And Don Coryell brought his Air Coryell, is what it ended up being called, offense from San Diego State in college to the St. Louis Cardinals first, and then the San Diego Chargers, and really changed the way the game was played. They talk about Bill Walsh, and we talk about other coaches who influenced, and I'll get to your comments here in just a second, and influenced the way the game was played. Don Coryell caused changes to the way the game was played on offense and the way the game was played on defense. And he's underrated as a coach because he could just never get some great San Diego teams. He had some really good teams in St. Louis, never won a playoff game. He had some really good teams in San Diego that actually reached the championship game of the conference and could not quite get over the top. I'll never forget the loss they had in Cincinnati. If you remember, after, I want to say it was in 80 maybe. They had a great playoff game down in Miami in the Heat, overtime. Famous shot of Kellen Winslow being carried off the field. But they played the AFC Championship game a week later after playing in that 100-degree heat in Miami and humidity. They went and played in temperatures that reached minus 50 degrees in Cincinnati, and they just were not equipped either. I don't think mentally had rebounded or were equipped to play in that type of temperatures. They didn't play well, and it was an interesting game to watch, though. So, couple of Turning Stone, TC. All right, now I learned a new acronym today. I lost my coffee. Well, have fun. Don't lose too much money. Remember, we're going to start subscribing to this channel. Just kidding. Did I see the CrossFit Championships? Those people are real athletes. No, I didn't. I'll have to admit I did not pay any attention to the CrossFit Championships, although I'm a big participant, Kenny, as you know, in CrossFit training. I like to cross train between beer, tequila, and then maybe some nice cognac. Kidding. Nice. Notre Dame doesn't. Near as many division. What does that mean? Nice, but Notre Dame doesn't. Near as many. Oh, I see, because of their academic standards, which, by the way, not wrong. There is a misnomer, and the SEC is not really known for their academics other than Vanderbilt. But there's a misnomer that none of these really powerful college football programs have great academic standards. Well, most of the Big Ten schools do. Miami, who people want to berate, because of some of their, the identity of some of their football teams when they were winning, thugs, as you were. Remember Catholics versus Convicts, another great 30 for 30 on ESPN. But Miami's one of the best academic schools in the country. I know that for a fact because my stepson went there. And it means something to come out of there with a degree, and it helped him get, a grant and accepted to North Carolina at Chapel Hill to complete his doctorate. So again, there's a lot of good schools, and you're right about Notre Dame not accepting nearly as many. I think you're saying so kids, not transfers, but gosh. Anyway, maybe potentially academically challenged players. I'll simplify it that way. But while that's true, Kenny, they have lowered those standards over the years as their football program has struggled They've lowered those standards somewhat. They're still very high. Don't get me wrong. They're still very high, but they've lowered those standards. They're not the standard that Stanford has or Duke has or probably Vanderbilt has. Those are losing college football programs for the most part. But anyway. Oh, what have we got? Actually, a few years ago, it was significantly or scientifically proven that male and female brains are different. Just like biological evidences. Change your coffee, maybe. Coffee's the only thing that keeps this brain going, though, CA. Listen, most people will run academic circles around me, or I shouldn't say intellectual circles around me. I get by on common sense and logic and not book smart in any way, shape, or form, as you've already probably noticed. Play. I don't know what you're adding to. I think I summarized what you were saying there. SEC, you can see a degree in basket weaving in California. Oh, might be a little bit of an exaggeration, Kenny, but I do get your point. You're in a roll today, Kenny. With we must have got started early today, or there was something in the muffins. I hope you're getting closer to being able to play golf, buddy. I was going to play. I have hurt, by the way. I don't know what I did. I have destroyed some ligaments in my wrist, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to play golf. I went out and tried to swing the other day, and I was okay if I didn't take a divot, which is impossible to do for a round of golf, right? And play well. So I am going to be immobilizing my right wrist and hand for the next week and try to get myself ready. I'm supposed to play golf next Saturday. And I want to get ready for when I can play with Kenny come the fall here. Kenny's a little ways away. I know he went out and made an effort last week and had to take a step back. So, again, make sure you take care of your health, Kenny, because that's most important. What else did I want to talk about quick in football? We'll go back to baseball, too. Again, I'm not getting excited necessarily about the preseason starting with the Hall of Fame game the other night. You could care less. They should probably put more emphasis on this, as I've talked about. In training camp, you get 10 practices where you can wear pads, and then nobody plays in the preseason games anyway. Aaron Rodgers famously has not played in a preseason game since 2018, and I don't think it really matters as long as you're only going to put him out there for a quarter anyway. You go back. I've watched some preseason games and recapped some preseason games. I was reading a couple of books recently about that chronicled complete seasons for some teams, like the Green Bay Packers in the 70s. And so anyway, they recap every game. And you look in the preseason, and in every preseason game, and they were playing 6, the starters were playing the entire game. Not the entire game, but 3 quarters. So you'd see numbers like you would see in the regular season. Anyway, what else? Anything else going on? Nothing that I really care to talk about. Alvin Kamara was banned, and Chris Lamons were suspended 3 games for their role in a fight in 2022 in Las Vegas after the Pro Bowl ceremonies, I believe. Lots of good reasons to play any sports in Las Vegas, right? Because we hear all this great news coming out of Vegas all the time. But other than that, I don't have a lot to talk about. I did talk about the Patriots camp on Mac and Jack from this morning. If you want to take a look at that show, I'll share it on TGI Sports Talk later. We'll get into that. But I do want to talk I want to go through baseball just a little bit, unless you guys have some other topics you want to get into. Let's get back to the baseball. I want to look at some of the news and just go through the standings real quick because we never did do that on the MLB update the other day. We talked about the brawl the other day with Jose Ramirez and Tim Anderson, a brawl at second base, which was kind of a decent fight compared to others. Both players were ejected, and I think both managers were ejected here as well. I think it was a pretty good, interesting square off. Ohtani, who keeps coming out of his starts, I think with blister problems, not his start, but his pitching starts. He's scheduled to start again on Wednesday. And the Angels, as I said, foolish move. They are not. They're fading. We'll look at that when we look at the standings. Vlander in his debut for the Astros goes 7, but they lose to the Yankees 3-1 yesterday. Great outing for Nelson Cortez and his comeback. The Rays, McClanahan, who's had issues all year with his arm, among other. By the Rays, have done a great job of staying in this. And by the way, I think they made, if you watch the MLB update, you'll see I think they made one of the best moves of the year getting Adam Savali from the team formerly known as the Indians. Harper unlikely to return to the outfield this year. That's some of the news. And taking a quick look at the standings. And guys, if you got some things you want to jump into, we can do that. We're going to go a few minutes over. And I don't mind going a little bit over that if you do have some topics, because we took a lot of time on college football today, which we don't normally do unless there's games. We saved that for the college football huddle, but Jim Biringer was really wanted to come on today, and I'm glad he did, to talk about the college football movement. We'll get into more of that as well. In the East, the Orioles continue to lead by 3 games. They've won 3 in a row again. 27 games over in first place. Kenny, to your point, this is one of the best teams in baseball. When you look at the records, they don't lie. They got the second best record in baseball. Great job by their manager. Great job by the front office and building this team basically from within, which is probably going to become a model as you see some teams like the Orioles, the Rangers somewhat, Diamondbacks, missing a couple of the Marlins, building teams from within and then fortifying it with free agents and whatnot instead of the other way around. Yankees. Anyway, they maintain a lead of 3. The Orioles, the Blue Jays have won 2 in a row, 6 out of the last 10. They're 7.5 back, but they're leading. They're second, I should say. No, actually, they've got the 3rd wild card spot right now in the American League. Yankees just treading water, 5 games over. They need to get something going here, and Cortez hopefully will give them a little momentum boost. But without Rizzo, I wouldn't doubt he's out for the rest of the year. And the Red Sox, another silly team for not selling, have lost 3 in a row, 4 out of 6. Minnesota continues to lead the Central, just 4 games over, but they've got a 3.5 game lead over the team formerly known as the Indians. It's over. The Tigers, another team, why you're not trading all your free agents, no idea. Why they didn't find a way to get Rodriguez to accept a deal to L.A. is beyond me. And why Rodriguez doesn't accept the deal to L.A. is beyond me. I know he's got family. He wants to be here closer to the East Coast. Why is winning not important to these guys? I don't understand. And the White Sox, they just totally traded pretty much everybody except Tim Anderson. And the Royals finally lose a game. They were on a 6-game winning streak. They lost a game yesterday. They are now 7-3 in their last 10. They're really screwing up their chances of losing more than 120 games. The Rangers won 5 in a row, including Max Scherzer's debut, where he wasn't great, did strike out 9, had a rough first inning and overcame that. The Rangers won 5 in a row. They're back to a 2.5 game lead over the Astros. I think it's very interesting, this Verlander-Scherzer getting into this race on opposite teams. Great story to watch down the stretch. I think this will be a great battle. I do think the Astros will find a way to overcome the Rangers, and I do think the Astros will find a way to make it back to the World Series and repeat. I still believe that. They got some guys coming back from injury, and I think this is a team that is going to want to defend that title. Mariners playing better baseball, 8-2 in their last 10, won their last 4. Didn't do much at the trade deadline to help that offense. They got a really good pitching staff. The only move they made was to trade their closer away. The move is significant in my mind. So they're counting on the guys that they have in place now to be able to cut this 6-game deficit. They are right now 1 game out of the playoff. Am I right? Am I doing my math right there? Sorry. Actually, yeah, they're 3 games out of the last wild card spot, I believe. And then the A's, by the way, are 31-80, continuing to try to catch the 1962 Mets and lose 120 games. See what we got here. We got one comment from CA. Back to the MLB. Rays are 96% chance to make the playoffs, while 10% chance to win it all. Braves top around a 25 chance to win currently. That sounds about right. I mean, with the Rays record, it's going to be very hard for them. The bottom would have to completely fall out. They did a good job getting Savali, I think, to stabilize that rotation a bit. Not overpowering stuff, but he's a pitcher, and who knows how to pitch, right? He's not a thrower. He's a pitcher. Like a lot of guys today are throwers. I mean, take the clock off of some of these guys. Some of these guys wouldn't even get a look. There are guys from years ago that wouldn't even get a look today because they can't light up the radar gun. You know, would Tommy John ever make a major league roster, get a chance to make a major league roster today? You think Mel Stottlemyre, guys who didn't throw, great pitchers, guys who didn't throw 100 miles an hour. Going to the West, the aforementioned Braves they've started to right the ship a little bit. They had a bad spell. Still got the best record in baseball. Only by a game now over the Orioles. But they're 32 games over 500. 11.5 game lead over the Phillies. Phillies are going to have a tough wild card race. It's going to be a tough wild card race in that National League. We'll look at those wild card races in a second. Phillies in second place, 16-51, 6-4 in their last 10. The Marlins trying to right the ship. Not long ago, they were 11 games over 500. They're now 4 games over, 4-6 in their last 10. They did make some interesting trades to try to upgrade that offense. Not big names, kind of getting away from their normal approach of taking pitches, on base percentage. They went for guys who are, one-dimensional players maybe, hitting home runs. The Mets are the Mets. The Mets actually have lost 5 in a row now. They're 10 games under 500. The Mets actually could finish last in this division. Hard to believe when this season started, but they cleaned house. I don't know who's going to start games for this team the rest of the year, starting pitching-wise, but the Mets could very well finish behind the Nationals here. The Brewers, not playing great baseball at the moment, but have got a 1.5 lead over the Reds, who have really taken a step back, lost 5 in a row. Can those kids withstand a pennant race? Joey Votto, really the only real veteran who's been through these types of wars, and he's not playing very well. The Cubs, who I derided for their movements at the trade deadline, not selling, but also not buying either, which is a little odd. Lost. They've won 1 in a row, 7 out of their last 10. Still 3 games over 500, and a game out of the wild card, I believe. Pirates are the Pirates. The Cardinals cleaned house. They will probably race the Pirates to the bottom of this division. The Dodgers keep finding a way to win games. 17 games over, 3-game lead over the Giants. Brought in some pitchers that are a little questionable. Couldn't get Rodriguez to waive his no trade and come there from the Tigers. Very interesting. The Giants 7-3 in their last 10, hanging in there. The Diamondbacks are fading. They've lost 5 in a row. 8 of their last 10. They're only a couple games over 500 now. Not long ago, they were 10, 12 games over, leading the division, so they faded. The Padres trying to make a little run, 7-3. The Padres obviously have waved the white flag. In a wild card race, by the way, you would have the Blue Jays, the Astros, and the Rays, the Astros, and the Blue Jays in that order if the season ended today in the American League. Seattle 2.5 games behind the Blue Jays. Yankees 3.5 games behind the Blue Jays. The Red Sox 4. The Angels have fallen to 6. The National League wild card, the Giants lead it with 61. Phillies second. Reds still hanging in there with the third wild card spot as we speak today. But you got the Marlins a half game behind, the Cubs a game behind, the Diamondbacks a game and a half. The Padres only 3 back of the wild card now. And the Mets, believe it or not, only 7.5 out, but they're done. Like I said, I might be pitching for this team in the second half. So that's some of the stuff around Major League Baseball. Oh, just checked in table tennis, ping pong is played in Division I. No kidding. And they offer over 1,500 scholarships, 159 schools. At Division I? Interesting. Notre Dame have a ping pong team, Kenny? Curious. I love ping pong. I should have, if I was smart, I would have tried to get a scholarship in ping pong. So you and Jim chuckled, and I'm like, listen, I still chuckle about ping pong. I really would not have thought ping pong was a Division I sport, but I wouldn't think it would be an Olympic sport. I wouldn't think a lot of things would be Olympic sports, and they are. So, snowboarding, for instance. CA with the king of the emojis. That's it, guys. I think I've used up my time today. If you got something real last minute while I wrap it up, I want to thank Jim Biringer from Let's Talk Sports. Obviously, he does a lot of stuff on Let's Talk Sports. Full contributor to FullPressHockey.com, which is his full-time gig. Great stuff. If you want to catch up on hockey, check out FullPressHockey.com. I forgot to ask. See, I saw your comment about the football. Remind me on the college football huddle. We'll ask Jim about the fantasy baseball. Maybe I'll send it to him maybe in a direct message today. But thanks to Jim for coming in, talking college football, and also getting a little bit of hockey news. We'll be back on Wednesday night with the college football huddle. Talk more about this realignment nonsense. And listen, I've got to start dealing with the circumstances the way that they are and what's next. As much as I hate this, I've got to be realistic, and this is the landscape that it's going to be now and for quite a while. Thanks for the compliment, Kenny. Thanks for contributing. I know I laugh a lot when you say it, but I love the interaction that we have with you guys. CA, Rick, Anthony, whoever else might have contributed here this morning. I don't remember everybody. I apologize. But for all of you that will see this later and all the groups that let me share it, thank you very much. We'll see you next week with the Sunday Stream of Consciousness, and the next show, Wednesday night, the college football huddle. Have a great Sunday.